Welcome, travelers. We're aware that your journey was difficult, but prepare to have your questions answered, for you have been granted an audience with the Masters of Modern.
And welcome back to Masters of Modern. I'm your host, Alex Kessler, here with my co-host, Ben Bateman.
Way to take all the energy out of the room with that one. You had us built up. We're back.
I was so hyped.
I've been here for an episode with you in weeks. It's been, I think it's been 3 weeks since I've been in this room doing a show with you.
It's March.
Or even longer, actually, because 3 weeks ago I did a show without you. We don't even do shows together anymore.
Who are you?
Who are you? I don't even know
I was
you anymore,
I was here for the last 2 weeks, so you were gone because you were like in Chicago for 12 days.
I was
pitching toys.
Around. I was doing toy stuff.
Yeah.
And I was also performing in Schmodown. And it was crazy. Yeah. Performed for 1,000 people. I'd never done that before.
Since we last saw you, All of War the Spark has been released. We also got cool Japanese exclusive anime planeswalkers that I just want all of them.
Are you going to buy them all?
If there is an option to just buy them straight up instead of having to buy boxes of Japanese War of the Spark,
yeah,
I would just snap do that today. So if someone could link that towards me, either Twitter or YouTube, to that link, so I can just buy them straight up, I would just do that.
Is the anime Jace the Mind Sculptor super dope?
It's not. No, it's not. It's not. It's only the planeswalkers in the set.
Oh, it's the 36. You get the exclusive
Jace
art.
Unbound or something along those lines.
The 4-mana one that
It's
combos with
mostly
Thought
the
Lash.
art. The coolest one is that Liliana, the 6-mana one, the new one, is the same artist that did all of the concept art of every Final Fantasy game, and then like Vampire Hunter D, and it's like one of the coolest things I've ever seen. I just want a playmat of it. Card sleeves.
I just put a picture on Instagram of you with swoopy hair referring to you as emo Alex, and you just then in the next sentence reference Final Fantasy and Vampire Hunter D in the same
Vampire
sentence.
Is pretty emo.
So
I don't know if
I'm
Final
like,
Fantasy is emo.
I'm
just going back to high school Kessler.
Alex.
Yeah, that's what's going on today. I got a gorilla shirt. I mean, like, people don't know this, but my mom owned the clothing company X Large while I was in high school and middle school.
Really?
She sold it to a company eventually when I was in college, but I exclusively wore X Large clothing. That is a clothing brand that has mostly gorillas on it. It's like logo. So bringing 100% high school Kessler's back with his swoopy emo hair.
Cool. Yeah, I like it. So yes, we are back from all the things. We're here in studio. We're talking about War of the Spark. This is our full set review. It's going to be a two-parter, so you guys are going to hear part 1, and then part 2 is going to post next week.
Yep.
That way we can go in depth with the 100-plus cards we want to talk about. It's pretty wild talking about a set that has 36 Planeswalkers, not because they're all good necessarily, but they're all relevant.
Well, and we were talking about this earlier. I think that obviously every Planeswalker ever, I think we've talked about when they get released on this podcast, just because there's always something a little bit to talk about on them, and there's something always to pay attention to. But the static ability Planeswalker, which is the big new mechanic here that's allowed them to kind of create these uncommon Planeswalkers, to me feels like a new permanent type. So, like, and Wizards classically is bad at new permanent types, and when I say bad, I mean they often will be overpowered because there's things that they're harder to test,
or underpowered. Yeah, they usually, it's very rare you get the lower 1/5. Like, that doesn't happen very often with a new card type. It's not usually that balanced.
Right. But even then, like, next set that they came out with had Ajani and Elspeth and Tezzeret, and then all like have been talked about as best Planeswalkers ever printed, and then the following block after that had Jace the Mind Sculptor in it.
Right.
So like.
So I think
the first 5 were all really strong, but all of them were probably 10% stronger than they would have been if they were printed today.
I think one thing that's really interesting is that they will often come up with key wording after they've tested something out, right? So like, for instance, what's a great example of something where like
Menace was showing up in cards for like 3 years before it became a keyword.
Sure. And so like when that happens, usually what you'll find is you'll go back and realize that they were testing out the mechanics of this on single cards, you know, obviously like level up, figure of destiny kind of a thing. And I think what's really interesting with the Planeswalkers is some Planeswalkers, like Architect of Thought, for instance, had an ability that was like, until your next turn, this thing happens when you activate this Planeswalker ability. Well, they have 2 abilities pretty much across the board, but that first ability, that static ability, is effectively replacing that clause until your next turn, this thing happens at all times, right? And so I think that's like a really, really interesting mechanic that you have to think about now, is that play pattern where something is happening on your opponent's turn based on a sorcery speed activation on your turn is forever with these cards.
Right. Like the fact that almost all of them basically now have 2 pluses a turn or 2 ability activations a turn is something to like really pay attention to. And then back to the point of new permanent types, vehicles had the copter. Then that was overpowered. Equipment had in the first 2 years 7 equipment that were all extraordinarily problematic. Not to mention like even all the way up to extended cards and Mirrodin block where that was problematic as well. So like there's a history of Wizards coming up with new card types and then not knowing exactly how to balance it because there's so many bells and whistles, and I think some of these are going to be a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get fully into the set review and all of the cards we're going to talk about, this is the Masters of Modern podcast. You guys can find us on Twitter at the MMCast. Big congratulations to us. We crossed 5,000 followers.
On Twitter.
On Twitter.
Yeah.
That was a thing. We've done the show for 4+ years, 210 episodes or something like that, and we hit 5,000 on Twitter. So that's exciting. Thank you. You guys can find me personally at Ben Bateman Media on Twitter.
I'm at Kess Wiley.
And we're on other platforms. There's like a Discord. There's a Facebook group about 5,000 people. We have a YouTube that you're probably watching this on right now, or maybe you're listening to this on iTunes.
And if you're listening, you should watch it because there's cards. And we're not always, especially in card review episodes, the best at reading every single piece of text on a card. And thanks to our wonderful producers, there's now a card art right here.
Yes, this episode is going to be an enormous amount of work for our producers because there's 130 card images to pull.
Between 2 episodes.
Yeah. But nonetheless, we
Plus
have a YouTube
Nick's.
channel, and it's done really, really well. And recently, it's been picking up steam, and it's been really exciting to have you guys supporting us. So please continue to subscribe, like, comment. It's the best thing you can do to help growing the MMCast brand. We have a Patreon. We'll talk about it later. Let's get into...
Well, really quick, before we get into the set review, there's a thing.
Yeah.
You're excited about something that I'm not going to talk about. Maybe.
What were you going to talk about?
Well, the Mythic Championship is this weekend.
Okay.
That's Modern focused.
Yeah.
Now, we're not doing an episode on that. If you want to learn a little bit of what's going on with the Mythic Championship and all the specific things, we did a really good episode with Nick Prince 2 weeks ago. Highly recommend listening to that if you want to kind of get an idea what this Mythic Championship / what used to be Pro Tours is going to be about. One interesting thing is, as we do the set review, is none of these cards are legal in the Pro Tour, in the Mythic Championship. This is the new set is not in the Modern format legal yet because it's during the pre-release.
It's kind of a weird decision, right?
We'll find out. I mean, it's the one format they can do that with. It would be really weird if it was standard. Like Modern, at least, like isn't normally that affected that quickly by a new set. Now, we've on the podcast argued many times that almost every new set affects Modern in a pretty significant way. But this one is absolutely not going to be affected by the new set because it can't be. So the nice thing is all of our shot calls aren't going to matter in 3 days when the actual event happens. Also excited about the pre-release. That's going to be cool.
I'm hyped about it. Before we actually get into the set review, I do think it's probably worth mentioning just quickly the results of Grand Prix Yokohama, just because it's a Modern tournament.
Yeah.
And we had
it's the last Modern tournament before the Mythic Championship.
It was won by Hardened Scales, which continues to be a house of a deck, and I think has really separated itself now from being like, this is what Affinity has become in Modern. It's not like Affinity, standard Affinity, like doesn't pop up much anymore.
Sure.
It's a different deck, but this has taken the place of the fast artifact aggro deck.
Right.
It's kind of just combo Affinity is what it feels like when you play against it.
Well, it's interesting that like Green finally has figured out how it wants to interact with artifacts, and that's through counter manipulation. And especially as we go through this set and we talk about it, Green was one of the 3 main colors that proliferates in this set, and that's probably now its strongest activity when it comes to artifacts.
It's another really interesting thing to think about, and this is just like rule of thumb with Magic. If you are trying to come up with what is going to be powerful, if you want to spec on cards, if you want to focus on permanents that have some interesting ability that cost 1. So Hardened Scales, not surprising that Hardened Scales ended up being the engine of a deck that's tier 1. The card Training Grounds, which I love, is a $17 rare. Mm-hmm. It's been printed 1 time. Eventually, that's going to be $50 because somebody's going to figure out some way to put 4 of those into a Modern deck, and it's going to break the format, just the same way Hardened Scales did.
Yeah.
Eventually, it'll absolutely happen, right? Some ability that costs 3 is going to cost 1 because of that, and then it's going to go infinite. And it'll just be a combo, and that's going to be like a tier 1 deck.
The word absolutely sounds strong.
Pretty sure. Run this back once it happens. But.
You're not wrong.
Yes. But anyway, the rest of the top 8, Banned Spirits lost to Hardened Scales. You had 3 copies of Dredge in this top 8, coming in 3rd place. And then you had a copy of The Rock, Azorius Control, and finally, Jeskai Phoenix in 8th place.
Jeskai.
There's a single copy of Return to Dust in the sideboard, and there's not even any white mana in the deck, so I think it has to just be a mistake.
Or he's just playing off of Manamorphose. I mean, the Endorshi. I don't know who the player is, but they definitely have an opportunity to cast double white.
Yeah, and with like Pyromancer Ascension, because this version was playing a couple copies of Pyromancer Ascension.
Yeah,
I guess like it's more likely you end up casting the Metamorphose, and it's just a one of. But the most interesting part about that Jeskai Phoenix list was not actually the single copy of that card. It was the 4 copies of Nyx. Do you guys know what Nyx is? I've considered playing it before. I just want you to know. It's
1 blue for a rare instant counter target spell that was no mana was used to spend to cast it.
Yes, it is from Future Sight, so it has the old border, the old weird Future Sight border.
I think it's the future border. It's the new border. It hasn't happened yet. Soon border.
Soon border. It has the Future Sight border, and this version was playing 4 copies. I mean, if you think about it, it's good against like. Obviously, it's really, really good against Surgical. So it's the super, super meta call because, like in the Phoenix matchup, it's your 1 blue, which is like not that much better than just playing like Spell Pierce. I feel like most of the time in that deck early on when you're gonna want to like, but later in the game, whatever, and people have mana open. But then it also is good against say like if you're on the play, you can just like play this to counter a Mox Opal. You can play it to counter a Summoner's Pact.
Well, there's so many. Yeah, there's so many right now in Modern, especially powerful plays that cost 0 mana. What's interesting to me is that this is a 79 cent, 99 cent Future Sight rare.
It was just played as a
that's got play of 4 of in a Modern top 8 and like hasn't and like. We were talking about this before. You're kind of on the train of this seems just like a black swan, right? Like a blip moment that like shouldn't have happened, but happened this time. But if that's true, that feels like more of like when 1 card is played. But the fact that he was playing 4 of them, even if it goes down to 2 in the long run, that's so many.
We'll see. But hey, if you want to spec on Nyx, be my guest.
99 cents, I might buy 9 copies. SCG has.
So, all right. I think that's going to pretty much wrap that up. I think we should probably try to get into the episode. Okay. We are going to be announcing the Gaggle of Gideon's winner from a few weeks ago on part 2 of this. Yeah. So you won't get it this week, but be sure to tune into the second part of this if you want to find out who won that contest.
Or do you want to do it next week, or do you want to do it just when we get to the Gideon card and do the review of Gideon?
I don't know. Dealer's choice.
Okay.
We can make that decision once we get there. So let's start.
Cards are sorted alphabetically, so we don't even know where Gideon's going to show up. But G's pretty early.
That's reasonably
early. I have
early.
bets on today.
Yeah. Okay.
I could look, but then that's not fun.
That's not fun at all.
Yeah, no. Yeah. All right, so first card is the Obi-Wan Kenobi of Magic, Ajani the Great-hearted. 2 green-white, legendary planeswalker Ajani. He has the static ability of creatures you control have vigilance. He is a rare. And his pluses, you gain 3 life. His -2 is put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control and a loyalty counter on each planeswalker you control. That's like his thing.
Each other planeswalker. That's important.
Each other planeswalker you control. Correct.
And he has 5 loyalty when he comes down. Yeah. So this is similar to the 4 mana 1 white 3 colorless from like one of the M sets, I think. Right, that's the one that had the.
There's the 3 in white he can get. He's had give counters to planeswalkers, I think now twice on his cards because he has the M19 had it, and then the whatever the one with Garrick murdering people, M15.
That's the one I was thinking of. Yeah. I think that's the one that he gives counters to other people. I mean, okay, so if we're talking about this as a new card type, first and foremost, creatures you control have vigilance as a static ability. It's good, it's fine. Like a 4 mana enchantment that gives your creatures vigilance is like not playable in Modern, so. This is a good card. I think this card is cool. I don't ever see this getting played in Modern. I like this card.
I think it's the most boring rare planeswalker to me in this set.
Yeah, it is like everything we've just like seen this before.
All of the other rare planeswalkers in this set like were really exciting, and this one was kind of just like, huh. I mean, and maybe I'm under I mean, creatures having vigilance is probably really good in this set from a limited perspective and in general with a bunch of planeswalkers running around because your creatures can keep pushing, but also have the ability to defend. But yeah, I think I mean, gaining life is also really underrated. Like I think
this card is going to in previous sets, this would have been a mythic rare planeswalker.
Yep.
And this would have been a snap pick, first pick and limited that would have blown your mind to have in your deck. The fact that you can get this at rare and limited is a nice indicator of the power level.
Yep.
Because this being a rare versus a mythic is like, this card's a house in limited.
Well, but I think that's fair. Once again, we get into the permanent type thing. There's rares and limited. There's uncommons. We'll get to Ashiok at one point where like in any other set that Ashiok is powerful enough to be a mythic rare. It's just in this set. Yeah. It's like, I don't think it's that much worse than Kaya from last set, and she was a mythic. All right, next card. Angrath's Rampage. Black-red sorcery. Choose one. Target player sacrifices an artifact. Target player sacrifices a creature. Target player sacrifices a planeswalker.
Love this card. Huge fan of this card.
We entered into this set being, when you and Michael did the preview card episode with Gideon's Triumph.
Yep.
One of the conversations was like, oh, there's like no good edict effects in Modern right now. As of this set coming out, there's now 3.
Yeah.
And this one's probably the most powerful.
So this is like a card that you would consider this in the same class. Like similar cards would be Kolaghan's Command, Terminate, Dreadbore. Those are like sort of the comps of like what you're playing this card with.
Like if you're going to play this card, you have to choose between Terminate, Dreadbore, and this.
Kolaghan's Command, Bedevil. Like those are like the class of card we're talking about.
The Rakdos.
Yeah, and like they're all pretty interesting cards. I think this being a 2-mana edict is strong. I think that's probably the strongest. I also think for 2 mana target player sacrifices a planeswalker is quite strong considering like the problem is, okay, like if you want to get rid of an artifact in Modern, an edict on an artifact is not going to be good against those decks because they're going to have like 7. So
sure.
they'll sacrifice their Darksteel Citadel or like so you're not going to get much value out of that part of it.
Wait, Darksteel Citadel, the best artifact in Modern?
Yeah, sure. You're going way back on that. And I think an edict effect is always good. Liliana's proven that, and sacrificing a planeswalker is extremely good because you're almost always going to have one target.
Yeah, I think the sacrifice the artifact thing is more often just going to be you get them. Like sometimes they play an artifact and you're able to get them with it. The 2 main ones to me are going to be more the creature and planeswalker, but like artifact's really good against Amulet decks because you can get rid of Amulet with it, right? Or it's actually pretty decent against Tron decks because you can get rid of Mather Map on turn 1. Or the reason I play this is just like Boggles is a deck and Geist might come back at some point, and there's other hexproof threats that are just really good, and this is another really important tool that's good in more matchups, especially because planeswalkers are going to be seeing more play going forward. Look at Ashiok, look at Teferi. Like casting this when they have a Teferi across the board, like that seems like huge game. Being able to kill like a creature and or their planeswalker. All right, next card. First uncommon planeswalker, Angrath, Captain of Chaos. 2 black-red hybrid, legendary planeswalker Angrath. Creatures you control have menace. He starts at 5 loyalty and only has a -2. A mass 2. Put 2+1/+1 counters on an army you control. If you don't control one, create a 0/0 black zombie army creature token first. First off, I feel bad for Angrath. He just wants to go home to his family and keeps getting pulled by the Immortal Sun into places and isn't allowed to leave.
Story.
So his whole story was he was trapped on Ixalan for like years because that was like once you go there you're trapped, and then like as soon as he was able to leave he got brought to Ravnica. But the other cool thing and the continuation from his other card is he is the planeswalker that can like mind control creatures.
Okay,
he has like the red mind control effect in his power suite, the threaten effects, and so him being the weird amass 2 planeswalker, but he's not on Bolas's side, was a weird callback, but it's a callback to the fact that he's stealing the different army tokens and making them happen. Amass is an interesting mechanic. I guess we can start talking about it here. The fact that like in Modern, it's almost better than it is in Standard, because if you're going to play with an amass card, it's going to be the only one. So it mostly is just getting the token creature, but Angrath kind of has 2 abilities: -2, make a 2/2 token, and then -2, make that give a token +1, +2/+2, right? Like it makes it bigger and bigger.
Yeah, I think also, I mean, he's the first one we're talking about in the uncommon bracket, but often people have looked at Planeswalkers and said, like, all right, so if you're only getting the minus ability, this is a really slow sorcery speed version of this, right? Like historically, like let's say blue-green, 4 mana Kiora, it's like you get Explore. You get Explore and like a Fog because they'll try to kill it. With these ones, because they only have one ability, they have no pluses.
Right.
You're just playing something that gives your creatures menace, and you're going to get 2 activations of this Amass ability. It's 4 mana for 4 power over 2 turns, and these creatures have menace.
Right.
And I'm wondering, like, does the uncommon class with a single ability kind of almost qualify as its own card type as well? Additionally, like the multiple activation rare static ability planeswalkers are different than the only minus planeswalkers.
Well, I mean, there are a card that I can see them costing incorrectly, and we'll talk about Ashiok, which I think is probably the best example of that, and I keep bringing them up because they are really strong. One of my picks for probably one of the better cards, but the fact that you have, like, it's harder to cost. I wouldn't. It would take effort to cost something, not knowing, like, oh, if they only minus, then I can maybe make them a little bit more powerful than you normally would make a planeswalker. But then that has the opposite effect of making it possibly too strong. All right, next card, Arboreal Grazier, 1 green, 0/3 beast. It has reach. When it enters the battlefield, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield.
This card is pretty interesting for Modern, actually. Yeah. So this is better than Sakura Tribe Scout because...
I disagree, but you can go
because you get multiple activations out of the Scout?
So someone did, and it was... I wish I remember the tweet of the person who did it. It was a pro who is known to play the deck, the deck being Amulet Titan. And he basically broke down, like, this card versus that card and how much mana you get to and when. And it basically, Sakura Tribe Scout gets you to... I think it was 4 mana by turn 2 or turn 3 versus Arboreal Grazier that doesn't get you until turn 3 to 6 mana. So it gets you a little bit higher on turn 3, but on turn 2 is when you need the extra land. They broke it down better than I'm doing right now. I do like that it's a sloth beast.
Sloth beast. We need more of those in Magic. I guess the other thing too is, like, you don't really care about blocking in that deck. Like, that's not really what you want to do. We're like all in on the combo. So it being a 0/3 reach is like, okay.
I think the fact that it happens at that moment and it costs you a green mana versus putting it down on turn 1 and then turn 2 and 3 being able to go off with the Sakura Tribe Scout makes the Tribe Scout better.
Makes sense.
I do think this is, worth talking about. And I think in an environment where you want a 0/3 reach, like, that's that's part of the thing that I think does make it interesting is, like, this is a much bigger roadblock to a format with a bunch of 2/2 flyers, for instance, that Modern currently is not, but could be. And then having this in the sideboard that's on game plan is a valuable tool.
How did you get that it's a sloth beast?
It's in the art. The artist get a breakdown on how he came up with it. He combined a deer and a sloth.
You're such a nerd.
Wow. How does it feel to be on a Magic podcast? Next, we got Arland, Voice of the Pack, 4 green, legendary planeswalker Arland. Each creature you control that's a wolf or werewolf enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. You can -2 to create a 2/2 wolf creature token. Comes out at 7 loyalty, so it can at max make, without any shenanigans of proliferating, make 3 2/2 tokens while giving each of your werewolves a lord ability, basically.
So it feels like this is mostly a casual card, right? Like a fun card. People I know. Who was that love wolves? Was it Dramer?
Yeah, Andrew Dramer.
Andrew Dramer used to love wolves. But
I did send him this picture.
Yeah.
As soon as it came out of this card, and then there's like the wolf card that goes along with her. It ended up that wasn't his phone number anymore, but
in limited, definitely this card's going to be sweet. Here's the question though: at 6 mana, where do you pick this? Like, because it's 9 power over 3 turns for 6 mana.
It's more than that. Oh yeah, it's 9 power. Yeah.
And if you can find any way, like I don't.
There are other wolves in the set.
Are there blinks? The ways to get this back?
Well, there's proliferate.
Yeah,
everywhere. In limited, this card is it's a 6-drop green. I think it's comparable to like any of the like make 2/2 tokens or 3/2 token cards from Selesnya. But yeah, I think you pick it. I think in Modern, obviously, it's not a thing. I do think this, like, I would love to make a mono green wolves commander deck with this as a commander. I mean, that was the big argument that also happened while you were gone, was whether planeswalkers should be commanders or not.
Oh sure. I think I saw that. My Twitter was blowing up constantly on the road.
Oh yeah, I like picked a fight with the internet.
I get all your notifications. I mean, they're our notifications, but you just interact and like pick fights on Twitter.
All I'm saying is that planeswalkers should be able to be used as commanders. You can go watch a Command Zone episode that I was on. Sister podcast, they're great. They do commander content every week.
Love the Command Zone.
And I was on an episode where we talked about if legendary planeswalkers should be Commanders.
All right.
All right. So this is the next card. And the next card is possibly my pick for best card in the set, though I have another one, but this is high. It is Ashiok Dream Render. I'm glad we're talking about it early since I keep mentioning it. One blue-black hybrid, legendary planeswalker, Ashiok. Spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause their controller to search their library. It has a 5 loyalty and only a -1. Target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into your graveyard, then exile each opponent's graveyard.
So, a couple things about this. Foils are going to look so dope. It's such a cool looking card already. Like,
oh, yeah.
And the fact that it's only uncommon. Now, I think uncommon foils are probably already through the roof because, like, everybody knows this card is nuts.
Yes.
Like, I think an uncommon foil is probably like $12 already or something. But
Ashiok.
And it feels like because the set's going to be open pretty heavily and it's only an uncommon, it's probably worth actually waiting. And, like, those foils will probably go down a little bit.
Yeah, I think you have time for it to bounce back. It also has, like, it's $14.99 out of stock for a foil.
That's so stupid. That's so dumb. It's an uncommon.
It's a $2 uncommon. No, I mean, like Fatal Push uncommons were like, or Fatal Push foils at the time.
Were not $15.
Yeah, they were. They were $20.
Really?
Yeah. But so let me break. Like, so important things to keep in mind. First, this doesn't work the way that well, we don't have that printed out, but
like a Leonin Arbiter on Path to Exile,
right? Where Path to Exile, you can't like turn Path into like the best card ever printed, and you can't like make Ghost Quarter into Strip Mine with Ashiok because it's abilities that they control don't allow them to search, not abilities don't let them to search.
But it is a 3-mana permanent that's going to make it so they can't crack a fetch land.
Yeah. There's it's still really good. Like the fact that they can't crack fetches, the fact that it does like a small Blood Moon imitation is like really strong.
There's not a lot of great tutors in Modern. I mean, you have the Delirium one. You have Traverse the Open Wall to play. People play. Yeah. You obviously have fetch lands. What's the best like straight up card tutor? Like what's the closest?
We'll get to it later today. I think the blue-green, the new blue-green birthing pod effect.
You have Eldritch Evolution.
The most played is like it's
Court of Calling,
and the green one, the green pact.
Yeah, Summoner's Pact.
Like so both of those are like those are real. I mean, I think but Ashiok also doesn't turn them off.
Turns off Primeval Titan.
Turns off Primeval Titan. Yeah,
that's really good actually, because like the Summoner's Pact is important to stop, but if they just cast the Primeval Titan,
turns off Teleria West.
You're still boned, but the fact that they can cast a Prime Time and it's just a 6/6. Yeah. And that's their big play.
Yeah.
If you have this in play, they can't interact with this card. They don't have creatures to attack. They have like an Azusa.
Well, but they have like, we've just got a bunch of cards to be able to kill planeswalkers. But yes, correct. This card has like, Kaya is seeing play. And one of the reasons Kaya is seeing play is because -1 to, get rid of a 1 or less permanent and Nyx kind of the same reason for that. Or, getting rid of cards in graveyards. The other part of this ability, which is, delve, fuel, plus eat your opponent's graveyard and all their phoenixes is like also really strong. Like the amount of strategies that this card single-handedly fights against is I think one of the reasons people are considering it to be main deckable. And I think the fact that it hits fetch lands is like the main reason. It's relevant in every matchup.
It -1s to mill yourself and then exiles their graveyard and it does it 5 times.
Yep.
Like that's
you can get 20 cards into your graveyard.
That's so
off
good.
Of this card.
Not to mention that in the blue-black mill deck or the mono-blue mill deck that like has popped up from time to time,
sure.
and I have tried to make work. This card is a slam dunk.
Oh yeah,
yeah. It stops their fetch lands incidentally while also giving the ability to mill a third of their deck.
Right,
is crazy.
And like I mentioned Delve, but even just like the fact that it's their graveyard, not all graveyards. This is a sideboard card out of Dredge, even in some situations where it's just like I make my graveyard bigger and you no longer have access to your graveyard, Phoenix player or mirror match Dredge player.
Like, oh my god, playing this against Dredge seems so good.
Yeah.
Just like, I mean, now granted they'll have already like gotten going and they'll probably have something on the battlefield by the time this comes.
Well, but if you're on the play, bringing this in is like easy. Like, and against Dredge, you'll often be on the play because their game 1 is better than most.
Yeah, this card's really sweet. This might be the best card in the set for Modern, honestly.
It's up there. Yeah,
it's really
Awake. That's why foils are $15. Awakening the V2 Ghazi, 3 green, instant. Put 9 +1/+1 counters on target land you control. It becomes a legendary 0/0 elemental creature with haste named V2 Ghazi. It is still a land. One of my favorite things that happened in the story of War of the Spark, and the story is going to be relevant this episode. Sorry, Ben, but it's what we're doing here. Is that like each of the guilds got to use their like final weapons. And this was the Selesnya one. They like rose their tree god into a being, and that's what this is representing. Now, the modern relevance is that this makes a Inkmoth Nexus into a 10/10 flying infect creature, and you lose if you get hit by that. Now, that is a little bit more relevant in probably formats like Commander, but in Modern, I've seen people talking about it. There's also like other weird, like there's the Graftland.
It's called Lano Reborn. It's got some of my favorite art ever.
So you can just make it like you give them these counters go on it, but then can be moved off because of the graft ability. Like there's like other weird shenanigans of just making a land this big.
It being an instant is super, super, super relevant.
Yeah. Oh, if this was a sorcery, it would not be relevant to talk about even.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Inkmoth Nexus, and it's a little wonky because you're going to need the 2 mana, 1 to actually attack, the other to activate, and then 5 additional to cast this.
If you want to just get them.
But, I mean, that is a thing you can do.
Yeah. But you can also just on turn 5, leave mana untapped, make your land, and then untap, and then attack with at the end of their turn, animate your Inkmoth Nexus, and then when you untap, just win.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I think it's like not a non-relevant card.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
Next card, 3 green, Bioessence Hydra, Hydra Mutant. It's trample. Bioessence Hydra enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each loyalty counter on a planeswalker you control. Whenever 1 or more loyalty counters are put on a planeswalker you control, put that many +1/+1 counters on Bioessence Hydra. The art's cool. It's a real big trampling dude. I don't know if it'll see play in Modern. I do like the way they played with loyalty abilities. I think there's my favorite card in the set that does this is a planeswalker, not this guy, but I think it's cool. I think it's fine.
I mean, look, the rate's okay. A 5 mana 4/4 trample is fine. It's not great. You get 4/4 tramples for 4 sometimes now. The fact that though with a single planeswalker on the battlefield, this is probably a 7/7 or an 8/8 trample for 5, and it's quite possible that this thing, if you're playing it in the right deck. Now, granted, if you're going to play a 5 mana creature, there's probably a 5 mana planeswalker you would just rather be playing than this.
Sure.
So I think it makes it a little loose, but it's a cool card.
Yeah, I think the main, like, there are going to be people that attempt planeswalker tribal decks now, and this could be a top end finisher to that deck if they need a way to kill someone.
I mean, you could play this as the finisher in the deck you're talking about with enough planeswalkers that like you have it in a deck with red. That has the ability to give it haste. It comes down with 20 power and just attacks.
As a one-off kill. Yeah, like it can be a 20/20 pretty easily.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, maybe the reason it would be relevant. All right, next card. Blast Zone, land. This could be one of the other best cards in the set. Definitely in the top 5. Blast Zone enters the battlefield with a charge counter on it. You can tap it to create a colorless. You can pay XX and tap it to put a charge counter on the Blast Zone, which means that it 2 mana for 1 counter. So it's put X charge counters onto it. And then you pay 3 and tap it to sacrifice Blast Zone, destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost equal to the number of charge counters on Blast Zone.
So this is like some combination of an engineered explosives, an Oblivion Stone, and like a something, and a land.
Yeah. And what's the one that you tap it to put a charge counter on it? And
Ratchet Bomb.
Yeah, Ratchet Bomb.
Yeah, it's kind of in that world. It's really cool. Look, I think generally speaking, anytime you can play a land that's untapped, an untapped land that has an effect like this is really strong. I mean, the difference between what's the one that I always try playing in stupid tempo decks, the Exalted Land.
Sure.
Whatever it's called.
Yeah.
That card comes in tapped.
Right.
It's the literal difference between that card being like an awesome card and like basically unplayable. If this card was tapped, I think it would still actually be playable probably. It just would be slower. But the fact that it comes in untapped.
It's like a free removal spell.
Yeah.
Like your deck can just
really
run this and we'll be able to kill creatures with it and you'll be happy.
Now, do you consider this when you're putting this into a deck, do you consider this a full land or do you consider it like 70% of a land? Because
it depends on how many colors you're playing.
Okay, gotcha.
I mean, the cards like this and cards with abilities especially are ones that allow you to go up to 25, 26, 27 lands, which is going to help you mitigate mana flood, which is really strong. The fact that this also is, there are good tutors for lands. Like I think this can be easily in the sideboard of many decks that can just tutor for a land that they need for specific matchups. I think the fact that this is just like a free roll, like I think the real conversation is, do you play this over Field Ruin? Like that's currently the premier land that's good in the format. And we have some other lands that haven't seen play. There's the Graveyard one, the one that you can sacrifice a desert, it being a desert, so you can sacrifice itself to exile all graveyards. Doesn't really see play in Modern. Is this better than that? And I think this is. I mean, I've definitely been like, I need my lands to be able to kill a creature. This can kill a creature.
Yeah, for sure. And like, because it doesn't target.
I also think that there's a chance that like lands decks are, Modern Wizards is focusing on Modern Horizons to introduce strategies that they wish Modern had more of in Strength. And lands is a deck that's always kind of on the verge. You have like Countryside Crusher and you have Loam and like all these abilities, but just never really got there because it doesn't have good lands to do anything with. I can see, and there's another card in this set that we'll talk about that is leaning into that. There's a new, pitch lands that do damage to someone.
This card can take out a Slippery Bogle or
yes.
Like the fact that this is a land that cannot lose against Boggles. Very good.
Yep.
Very good.
Next card, Bolas Citadel, 3 black. Legendary artifact. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may play the top card of your library. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its converted mana cost rather than paying its mana cost. Sacrifice 10 non-land permanents. Each opponent loses 10 life. The last ability is like middlingly relevant. It's the middle one that like could make this a very busted card. It has a pedigree along with Ad Nauseam or Yawgmoth's Bargain of just being a very powerful card draw engine that could, if you build it deck correctly, win the game for you.
So what format does this get you most excited for?
I know which one you're thinking of. I think that this, like, there are better players out there that have talked and put out lists of like how this could be powerful in Modern.
Yep.
In Eternal formats. I know in Vintage, people are like, this card might be problematic because you just have all of the 0 cost boxes and everything else. I think it's obviously good in probably something like Highlander, though I've been cutting Yawgmoth's Bargain in that format, which is legal. Yeah. So like, I don't know if this is better than Yawgmoth's Bargain. I think it's probably worse.
No, I think this is better than Bargain.
Because you can draw cards.
Well, yes. And also because if you build your deck correctly with all 0s and 1s, you don't lose a life for playing a 0 cost card. So there's a lot of 0 cost cards you can play. Right. When you pay 1 life to draw a Lotus Petal, it's like not as good. Whereas if you just cast Lotus Petal and it's just free. The last ability on this, not that I think you're necessarily going to win with it very often in the deck we're talking about, but it's just sitting there and it's like, okay, if you're at 10 or less, when my chain starts, then I just kill you at a certain point in my chain.
Right. If you can put this in like an eggs deck or a just like 0 cost artifacts in your deck in total go off deck, like a Pure Steel Paladin deck, Cheerios, like this can just be a win condition because you can sacrifice all your bad 0 cost artifacts.
It's also a black card. It's a black artifact. Colored artifacts often like are really interesting because it's like searchable.
Well, so did you read Mark Rosewater's article on like their new philosophy as far as colored artifacts go?
No.
So this is the first set, and you see it with all the colored artifacts that they realized after Kaladesh block that like colored artifacts just shouldn't be a rare thing. Like they should just take advantage of it. It'll allow them to create artifacts that are cool and powerful, but also have
a restriction.
The restriction of being a color. You don't have the same problem of like all artifacts. Because if you print an artifact that's too good, it can end up in every deck in Standard.
Right.
Because it's colorless. And so by making them colored, they can create more powerful effects that can't be put into every single deck, which is another version of they might be printing, there's a bunch of weird new permanent types in this set.
This is an F&M win condition that's going to be really fun for someone. It's going to be really hard in Modern for this to be tier 1 competitive. Ad Nauseam costing 5 already is difficult.
But this is something that Ad Nauseam doesn't. You can play it and not have to. I think this has a different deck than Ad Nauseam behind it, and I think it has powerful potential. I do think it's better in Vintage.
Do you think Dark Ritual is going to be in Modern Horizons?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, you're probably right. All right, fair.
That card is really good. Next card, Bolt Bend. 3 and a red. This spell costs 3 less to cast if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. Change the target spell or ability with a single target. So this is a swerve or a, what's the free one?
Misdirection?
Yeah, misdirection.
Yeah.
For 1 red, which that's new to the red color pie. Or not new, I guess, but new in a way that we're excited about it. Yeah, I mean, this for 1 red mana, that's really good. For 4 mana, it's medium.
Well, there's a couple things in Modern specifically that I think it actually does that are really interesting. So the first one is if you are playing an aggressive deck, like let's just say you're playing Grixis Shadow, this allows you to have a red counterspell for a hand disruption spell.
Right.
Like a single red counterspell that thought seizes your opponent when they try to thought seize you is pretty good.
Well, also just it's a counterspell for counterspells.
Yeah.
Like you can change the target of a counterspell to Bolt Bend or to another spell. So it's not that hard to just take advantage of this. Saves your creature from a removal spell. There's a lot of different versions of this card being really powerful in decks that are already playing. What's the 1 blue counterspell that
Stubborn Denial?
It's the red Stubborn Denial.
Yeah, totally. This card's sweet.
It's a little better because I think that late game, if you don't have a 5/5 creature in play or a 4/4 creature in play, being able to just to cast it for 4 mana is better than Stubborn Denial's 1 mana tax. And when I say the 4 mana side of it, I mean the sense that with Stubborn Denial, if you don't have a creature in play, it's a 1 mana a tax.
It's a 4 spike.
The 4 spike for 1. And Bolt Bend at 4 mana still does the thing it does without the creature in play. I'd rather spend 4 mana to guarantee a thing than 1 mana to maybe get them.
Yeah.
Next card is Bond of Flourishing. Green and 1, sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a permanent card from among them. Put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. You gain 3 life.
This card is good.
Why is green better at cantripping than blue?
I mean, it's not this costs 2. So if blue had a comparable card,
it does. Well, anticipate.
Yeah, that's an instant though. And this is
this gains you 3 life.
Yeah, but it's only a permanent card.
It gains you 3 life.
Yeah. The card's good. I mean, I think this card's sweet.
Yeah.
I was trying to think, I don't see this being played in Modern. I was would I find room for this?
It's borderline, though. It's, not that, Telling Time Seas play in Modern. There's, other blue bad cantrips that I've seen played before. This is... in a format where gaining 3 life is much stronger than normal, just because burn and other things are trying to get your life total, and your life total starts so low. I think instant gain a life gain is always something to be paying attention to.
I mean, I paid attention to this card. I can't think of a Modern deck right now that this would slot into.
Correct.
Maybe if Amulet Titan is against burn and is I need a way to not die, I'll be a turn slower to get a land, but I'll gain 3 life every time I dig. Possibly.
Well, I think decks that aren't blue that need or red, if you're not blue or red, because those both have Faithless Looting available to you, or Opt or Serum Visions, being able to really a Boggles deck, being able to take a turn to look for a card that you need and stabilize a little bit because you gain 3 life to kind of mitigate the fact that you tapped 2 mana for a turn.
I mean, specifically against burn, it's interesting because the extra mana is a discard spell,
right?
So that's really good.
Burning Prophet, red and colorless, human wizard. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Burning Prophet gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Then scry 1. It's a 1/3.
I'm a fan of these cards. Is this a reprint or is this a?
I thought it was a reprint.
Maybe I thought so because you told me. It's pretty similar to other cards. The only difference is the scry. The scry is what makes this significant.
Nope, it's not a reprint.
Yeah, the scry makes it significant. It's there's a lot of effects like this, but
the fact that it has a semi prowess and scry both attached to it makes it you get bigger as you're casting spells, and you get to make sure you get more spells as you go.
In your Jeskai Ascendancy style deck,
right?
This is a card you want. The problem is that deck doesn't usually need the creature that has the plus. The Jeskai Ascendancy deck just wants the bird to win.
Sure.
So
more of a tempo play thing, but yeah, sure. Callousness Missile, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. It is blue and color, so it's 2 mana. It's a sorcery, but you amass 1, so you do get a creature out of it.
Yeah.
This is kind of a good example of where I think amass isn't good enough yet. Where, if this was, if we had a 1/1 creature that entered the battlefield for blue and a colorless, bounce a creature, bounce a permanent, non-land permanent to the owner's hand, we'd be talking about that card, right?
Absolutely. I think this card's better than you're giving it credit for. I think it's it's not blinkable, which is where the difference between the card you're talking about.
Sure.
Like an Aether Adept for 2 is not a thing. But this is almost bouncing an unland permanent in whether it's limited or it's a sideboard card in any format really it has some significance. There's giant
Mana War has seen
and
play in every format it's legal.
So yeah, I mean this
in Modern it's the one that also makes it so they can't cast the spell, but yeah.
there's going to at a certain point be a deck that's like, okay, so what I need to be able to do is I need to interact with an artifact and then also have a creature to sacrifice for this tutor effect or something. And then I'm like, oh, this is the card I need.
Yeah,
and you'll see 2 copies in their sideboard. Like that's what'll happen.
Or like if Cobblade, like a Cobblade like strategy where you're playing the black-green sword and you just need like interaction and spells that make some amount of creatures so you can start attacking and making sure your mana is always untapped.
It's also the fact that are the amassed tokens, they're zombies, right?
Yeah, they are zombies. So in the zombie deck, there's relevance. Zombies have. We'll get into zombie tribal a little bit, but there's been a lot of boons to the zombie tribal world. Next card, Casualties of War. 2 colorless, black, green. So 6 mana, sorcery. Choose 1 or more. You get to destroy an artifact, destroy a creature, destroy an enchantment, destroy a land, and destroy a planeswalker. So you can do all of those. You can destroy a creature, artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker, or if they don't have one of those things, not that.
So where this is different from like other cards that have had similar text in the past is that like the card Decimate, if I recall.
Yeah, this is the Golgari Decimate. It's like 2 steps above, and you can.
But
kill...
Decimate you can't cast unless you have all the targets, right?
Correct.
Yeah, because so this card is sweet. It's hard to cast, obviously. It's got a lot of colored mana symbols on it. It costs 6.
But like there's like an out of a Jund deck as a sideboard card, just like if there's like a long game, like there are like I can see this being a one of in a lot of Jund sideboards just from the perspective of is there a deck that this is really good against that Jund goes long against but needs like a control finisher, and like against Jeskai
this is gonna end
or blue-white control, like you get a Teferi, you kill a Colonnade, you kill like the enchantment that they use as a removal spell, any type of O-ring effect, you get one of their random creatures and you get rid of like an artifact that they have.
I think in general you can count on this card being a 3-for-1 most of the time.
Yeah.
And 6 mana 3-for-1 in the deck that wants value, that's exactly what that deck wants.
Right.
Like they're happy paying 2 mana for like value for like a 1-for-1 effect. So one card getting you that times 3, pretty good.
Really good.
And like in the mirror too. Can you imagine? Like
yep.
This card is like the mirror breaker in the in like
killing Liliana,
a
Raging Ravine, and
like their resources are just shrunk so hard.
Chandra's Triumph, red and colorless. Instant. Chandra's Triumph does 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker and opponent controls. If you have a Chandra, it does 5 damage.
Why are we talking about this card?
Because it's a planeswalker removal spell in like mono red. Like I think that's more the planeswalker half of this card is the more relevant one. The fact that it does like a bad lightning bolt impression is important, but 5 damage to a planeswalker at instant speed is relevant. But that's it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Shaundra the Artisan.
Red 2. Legendary Planeswalker Shaundra. Whenever 1 or more loyalty counters are removed from Chandra, Fire Artisan, she deals that much damage to target opponent or planeswalker. It's a stack ability. +1, exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. -7, exile the top 7 cards of the library. You may play them this turn. She comes down at 4. She's a rare. So this is another one of the rare planeswalkers. I think this is much better than Ajani. I don't know if this is going to be super powerful. The one thing I will say is I love her stack ability. I think it's really, really cool. The fact that like you have to, if you attack Chandra, she'll either kill the creature that attacked her or... Oh, no, not to any creature. So she'll just do that damage to the player or a planeswalker that they control.
She has the like Boros Reckoner effect in that sense.
Right.
The Spite Mare effect where just like you don't want to mess with her because you'll take damage.
Right.
And it gives her a little bit of security.
And she just draws cards. I mean, like that, the drawing card part of Chandra is one of the kind of really important things they added to her power suite. And I think this card is good at it. I don't think it's better than the 4 mana Chandra that we're playing right now, the one with 4 abilities. But I think like there's just like more, it's interesting that this is now a part of things that she can do. And I'd like to see her take advantage of this ability moving forward.
The design on this card is really cool. It's really, really cool because there's a couple things. It's not cast it, it's play it, which means that if it's a land, you can put it into play. So if you cast this on turn 5, you plus it, it's a land, you just play it.
Right.
The fact that you plus it, she doesn't have a defense, but they attack it. If they can't kill it, they're going to take damage, and you just keep plussing and drawing cards. Mm-hmm. She's gonna be a burn spell, and she's gonna draw you cards. And if they don't want to take the damage or they don't interact, she gets ultimate in a pretty good way, pretty fast.
Her ultimate is just draw 7 cards. That's good, but not like backbreaking.
But remember, also her ultimate is 7 damage.
You're right. Yeah. It's do 7 damage and draw 7 cards. Okay, much better than I kind of thought about it.
Pretty
yeah,
strong.
You're right.
I think this card's pretty good, actually. We talk about We haven't mentioned the card doubling season once yet, even though like it's like the relevant planeswalker helper at all times. I do think that there's going to be that doubling season deck is going to be a thing people are going to do.
No, I mean like the problem with the doubling season deck is always that it's 5 mana to cast an enchantment that doesn't do anything when you cast it.
Yeah,
and it doesn't really do anything until the next turn. But when it does next turn, you win generally, which is part of that. So fine. It's a sorcery speed 5 mana win condition, and there are other ones of those that exist that win you the game quicker.
I like this card, but it's not going to make a major impact. But it's a cool card.
Command the Dreadhorde, 4 black, sorcery. Choose any number of target creatures and/or planeswalker cards in your graveyards. Command the Dreadhorde deals damage to you equal to the total converted mana cost of those cards. Put them onto the battlefield under your control. This is a like.
I missed this card.
Yeah, it exists. I don't think this is better than Living End. I think you still like are just the hoops you have to jump through to make Living End happen is still going to be better than casting a 6-drop sorcery
that does a ton of
damage to you. But like, there's possibly a win condition here that you're not thinking of, and the fact that it gets planeswalkers back is interesting.
Mere Superior costs 2. You only take 2 to get a Superior back. Just saying.
So exciting! I'm excited.
Hypocrisite costs 2. Also get an Hypocrisite back.
That's true. It's a 4/4.
4/4. Pretty good.
6 mana 4/4.
Just saying.
That does 2 damage to you. Next card. Commence the endgame. 4 blue instant. This spell can't be countered. Draw 2 cards, then amass X, where X is the number of cards in your hand. First off, this is an uncounterable, theoretically 4/4 instant creature that draws you 2 cards. So like just on that level, there's something to talk about. One thing I do want to talk about that's really interesting about this card is how much of a consecutive design this set has been to the Avengers story over the last 2 years.
Okay.
So both feature a purple-themed bad guy who has collected X amount of artifacts that are extremely powerful over the last 5 years to eventually attack a group of heroes that he brings all together to fight him. And kills Captain America, probably. We haven't seen Endgame yet, but like his contract's up. Spoilers.
Seems highly likely. I'm going to find out in just a few hours.
And then they come out with this card called Endgame. But yeah, I mean, the joke was, the fact that these 2 stories and this set and the set before it, even like all the stuff that this was doing was locked before Infinity War even came out. So like there was a lot of stuff that they were doing that was obviously very similar and on purpose, but it's interesting how similar they ended up actually getting to.
This card is like sweet, but not playable in Modern.
I don't know. I agree with that. 6 mana instant that draws you 2 cards and gets you a creature that is a 6/6 that can't be countered.
So you think maybe like this is a one-up in the sideboard of like a Jessica, of like the Colonnade deck?
The card that this is competing for is Sphinx's Revelation. So, and I think this is better than Sphinx's Revelation in a lot of situations, especially right now in a world where Phoenix decks and other blue decks are everywhere and they have decent counterspells.
So you're just like, okay, I'm gonna like, we're just gonna like card advantage each other, and then I'm just gonna cast this end of turn against your Jeskai or your what's the blue-white? I'm so tired. Azorius deck.
Sure.
And I'm going to just untap with a 6/6 and 2 cards because you didn't do anything because you couldn't counter this. Now, if you don't interact with it, you're going to die in a couple turns?
Yeah.
Seems sweet.
Yeah. I think like there's more, like this is, again, amass is a weird mechanic where like amass in multiples is worse than it is. It's kind of like Delve, right? Where like in limited, it's cool, but in Modern, you want like one big amass card, and this is one big amass card.
Yeah.
Art is also amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Contentious Plans, blue 1, proliferate draw card.
This card is sick.
Yep.
I don't even really know what to do with it yet. I just know that for over the years, I've looked at Steady Progress a million times.
Which Steady Progress is 2 and a blue.
Instant
Proliferate draw card.
And I've always been like, God, if this only costs 2. And then like when I saw this, I was like, oh, that's what I've always been looking for. But what the hell was I looking for it for? I like couldn't remember anymore. I was like, but I know this. I'm gonna realize one day that there was a reason that I wanted to play this.
I mean, like the first thing my brain goes to is that you can in Infect proliferate an Infect counter, draw a card, and then fuel the Delve. Like it gives you Delve fuel.
Yeah,
that's like the most medium version of this card in Modern. Now, that's not to say that there aren't better things to do with proliferate. It's just if that's the base level, what can you do that's better than that?
Do you think Pentad Prism foils are going to go up? Because I feel like Pentad Prism with all the proliferate and the cheaper proliferate
cool.
is like
I don't hate it.
That's like a thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's a card you're going to...
It can be a thing.
Yeah, if you could, definitely with the repeatable proliferates, the like flux mage or whatever, that's going to be the thing.
Yeah.
That's Marshall. I can give Marshall credit on that one. He texted us that.
Yeah.
But he's right.
Next card, Cruel Celebrant. Black and white, vampire. Whenever Cruel Celebrant or another creature or planeswalker you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. It's a 1/2. There has to be a top end of Blood Artists that eventually you're just good enough to make a deck that involves Blood Artist. I also think Modern Horizons has already shown that it plans on making a black-white Aristocrats deck better with the cards that they previewed for Modern Horizons.
Aren't we like just positive Carrion Feeder is going to get reprinted?
I have like a 9 out of 10 chance bet on Carrion Feeder being printed.
That's like one of my top cards.
Yeah.
I think when we did our predictions, I might have called that as my number one.
Yeah,
actually.
like most likely to be printed in the set.
Yeah.
So I think that just this card is comparable to Blood Artist, and it's the second best Blood Artist ever printed, and the only reason it's not the best Blood Artist ever printed is because it has white in its mana cost, which makes it like 5% harder to cast.
Well, but it is also you control, which is why Blood Artist.
Oh, it is you control. You're right. I missed that.
Blood Artist is much better.
Yeah, Blood Artist is much better.
This is Zulaport Cutthroat, except it's a 1/2. That's a 1/2 as well.
Yeah,
actually. Yeah, and this card's all right.
It gets planeswalkers.
It's a vampire.
And a vampire. And Zulaport Cutthroat. Blood Artist is. There's a vampire thing there. I think Zulaport Cutthroat is also a vampire. This is like a vampire ability.
Would make sense.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Aristocrats is just getting closer. I mean, they now have 12 of this effect.
Right.
That's the other important relevant thing is like I was already the last GPLA that was a modern event, or maybe 2 GPLAs ago. That was a modern event. We had Blood Artists. I lost one of the games I lost was against the Blood Artist Collected Company deck, where it just like there were just so many eventually that I was like, anything I do, I lose.
Yeah.
Like if one of these dies, I take 7. Next card, and this is a card that people are really excited about. Gabrielle Rogue Shadow Mage, 2 and a black, legendary planeswalker Gabrielle. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has 1 or fewer cards in hand, Gabrielle Rogue Shadow Mage does 2 damage to them. Target player discards a card -1 on a 3 loyalty planeswalker. So it is a 3 mana target player discards 3 cards with a rack attached.
Somebody tweeted at us the other day, right? And
so yeah, I asked Twitter like, what cards are you most excited about? 8 rack players are like foaming at the mouth for this card.
Well, somebody said to me, and maybe it was just to me, and they said, "Hey, what do you think about Gabrielle? I'm considering this as a budget version of Liliana in my 8 rack deck."
Yeah,
and I think it's a really strong consideration. I mean,
it might be.
Liliana's Edict effect is the biggest thing in that deck. Like,
sure.
You want ways to proactively further your game plan that also allow you to interact. And so having a creature removal spell that also can make people discard cards is very significant. Mm-hmm. And you're going to be, like, unfortunately, up the creek without a paddle if you don't have a piece of interaction for, like, their Death Shadow they're just going to kill you with.
Right.
But on the other hand, this gets you the win.
Right.
This is a win condition. This is a rack. And, like, Liliana's not.
Sure.
So damage is better than sacking permanents.
Yeah. I mean, one thing this is once again on the flavor side that I'm really excited about this card. This character is from the short story created by Brandon Sanderson, who's the writer behind Stormlight Archive and Mistborn and the book series I've been reading a lot recently. And I'm now rereading Stormlight Archive as we speak. I can show you my audiobook file and literally what's playing. And it's really cool that he got a character that he got to create and then brought to life. And he's like a cool black discard mage. And I'm all excited about it. Next card, Death Sprout. 1 black green. Instant. Destroy target creature. Search your library for a basic land card. Put it onto the battlefield tapped. Then shuffle your library. One thing that's interesting is that this card didn't exist already.
Yeah, it is, right? This is kind of like a Mulvaney Acid Moss in some ways.
It's like rampant growth and destroy target creature attached to the same card just wasn't a thing that they had made ever. They on the mothership they were talking about how like it when they printed this card or when someone came up with it, they're like, this has to exist. And they like looked and it just doesn't.
Yeah, I mean like the whole like do something, get something effect, right? Like this is the creature kill version of Acid Moss is what it feels like.
Yeah.
It's just but how did that not exist yet?
Yeah.
And especially with this casting cost, like you're like, what? Wasn't this just in the original Ravnica?
Right. It's like, I'm going to use the word a lazy design, but it's not. I mean, like it's like very clean and really cool. The art also,
dope.
The art is stunning.
Yeah.
This set in general has stunning art on top of the fact that there's now an entire layer of like famous Japanese artists that did a bunch of anime versions, but like this card is really cool. I think this is possibly playable. I think it's like a weird include. I don't think Jund wants this, so I don't know if it's actually playable in Modern. It is an instant, which is relevant versus a sorcery. Like instant speed land rampant growth is something. But yeah.
Yeah, basic land card. Anyway, cool.
Next card. Deliver unto evil. 2 black sorcery. Choose up to 4 target cards in your graveyard. If you control a bolas planeswalker, return those cards to your hand. Otherwise, an opponent chooses 2 of them. Leave the chosen cards in your graveyard and put the rest into your hand. Exile, deliver unto evil. So it is a like gifts ungiven out of your graveyard, or just get 4 cards from your graveyard for 3 mana. I think the biggest issue is just getting cards into your graveyard is going to be hard.
It costing 3 is significant. I mean, that's a pretty good rate.
4 cards for 3 mana, or 2 of the gifts ungiven-esque situation for 3 mana. I think you still play gifts over this. People I think this is maybe something that's really powerful in standard, but I think in modern is going to be not good enough.
I think that honestly, for different names, no, up to 4 target cards in your graveyard.
Yeah. But they have to be in your graveyard, and it's any card, so you can get instant sorceries, like you can get anything. So it is very powerful.
I don't know what's going to be done with this card necessarily, but I think this card is really cool, and the art's dope.
Yeah, this is another one of the better arts.
Yeah, really cool. I think this card's really interesting, actually.
Yeah, I think it's good.
I can't figure it out just offhand, but like the cost is correct, and your ability to like factor fiction gift style set it up to work in your favor is gonna work.
I think there's a few black like control decks or grindy decks that just playing one of these is like playing this instead of people were previously playing the like converge. If you 3 mana draw 3 cards, lose 3 life black card.
Yeah.
This is better than that card.
Yeah, I agree.
Next card, D-Spark, black and a white. Instant exile target permanent with converted mana cost 4 or greater. This kills a lot of good things.
This is massive push. It's yeah, this card's good. It exiles, which is really relevant and interesting.
Kills every planeswalker other than Liliana that currently sees play in modern. That will change, but for now, it kills like Leyline of the Void. It kills Leylines of Sanctity. It kills
this in black-white at instant exiling Jace into Teferi is very strong.
Yep,
like that's just on its own.
Yep.
This exiling a Primeval Titan is really strong.
Yeah, I think this card just totally it exiles a Phoenix.
Yeah, exiling a Phoenix. Now black-white. What's the deck? This goes into Mardu Pyromancer?
I mean, Esper is a thing. Mardu Pyromancer is a thing. Black-white tokens might become a thing based on what we talked about. The Aristocrat deck. There's reasons to play black-white together.
This feels like an Abzan card.
Counter Company.
This maybe is like a one of main deck Abzan, depending on what your meta is. You could play a couple more on the board.
Yep. Domri, Anarch of Bolas. 1 red, green, legendary planeswalker. Domri, creatures you control get +1/+0. +1, add red or green. Creature spells you cast this turn can't be countered. -2, target creature controls fights target creature you don't control. 3 mana. If there previously was a card that was 3 mana to give every one of your creatures 3 mana planeswalkers that just had a plus, give all your creatures +1/+0 and made mana, it would be like theoretically considered to be played. This does that. Plus is a removal spell. I mean, the biggest issue is that it's a planeswalker that doesn't protect himself, but like
I think this card's really good.
Yeah.
It's a front-facing anthem permanently. So as a I want to draw this to win with a creature deck, it's a strong draw. It's I'm going to play this early off of like a mana bird, and then I'm also going to advance my game state further.
Right.
And on top of that, it's a removal spell when you need to break a board stall. I mean, in limited, this is going to be a house, but it costs 3. I think this is one of the better. This is
pretty good.
I think it's pretty strong.
Yep. And I would play this over Old Domri, which is, I think, the main competition it has.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to figure out where do you want that +1/+0? What deck is that relevant in? Like, it's not just like making a 4/4 or 5/4. But if you're playing this in like the right deck with trample, something with flying, this card is good.
Spoilers also, Domri is one of the 3 currently confirmed planeswalkers to die.
Well, good for Domri.
Good for Domri. Dovin's Veto. I know a lot of people are excited about this card. White and blue. Instant. This spell can't be countered. Counter target non-creature spell.
I mean, it's just an uncounterable negate for blue-white.
Yep.
I think it's less good than people think.
People play negate. Like
I think it's
I've seen it get out of people's sideboards
I
in
think
Modern.
this will see play, but I don't like. I saw people on Twitter talking about this a lot. This card is harder to cast than negate. It's a good card.
It's not really hard. Like blue-white decks are the main decks that are playing negates. I mean, I guess there are blue-red ones that won't be playing this. I think it'll see play. I think it's like a just total workhouse card.
Totally. With foil, that is gonna look sick.
Oh yeah, it's one of the promos too. It's one of the game day promos, I think.
I'm really happy they're pushing Dovin. I like Dovin cards.
He also might be dying. Well, we don't know actually. Chandra lights him on fire.
Got it.
Well, Chandra's signature art is lighting Dovin on fire.
I just like Dovin cards. I think
Sure.
they're sweet.
Dovin, Hand of Control, 2 blue-white hybrid, so it's white or blue. Legendary Planeswalker Dovin, artifact, instant sorcery spells your opponent's cast cost 1 more to cast. So it taxes your opponents, which is really strong. Until your next turn, prevent all damage that we built to and dealt by target permanent and opponent controls. So it's basically a tapper that taxes your opponent. This card's really good.
This card goes along like it's in the same vein as like Grand Arbiter, Augustin the Fourth, or whatever that card is.
Well, on the front end, yeah. Like Kiora, the blue-green one.
Yep.
Like I've tried playing that in Modern before. I mean, blue-green is not a good color combination, and but this is 2 very relevant halves of a card. It's good against Phoenix decks. It's good against Storm. It's good against Living End decks. And the fact that it also just like prevents a creature from attacking every turn.
Yeah.
Or like removes a threat. I would play this card in Modern. I would definitely consider it. It's strong.
Yeah, this card, I could see this card coming down in, like, if I'm playing a proactive creature deck and just, like, screwing me up really hard. Because you're like, oh, so now you make my best threat can't do any damage to you, and also advancing my board is going to be that much harder.
Right.
You know? I think it's pretty good.
Yep. I mean, it has, like, a Thalia effect attached to a tapper, which I think are just 2 very strong things.
Yeah, yeah.
Dreadbore Arcanist, 1 and a red, zombie wizard. Trample whenever Dreadbore Arcanist attacks. You may cast target instant or sorcery card with confirmed mana cost less than or equal to Dreadbore Arcanist's power from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that card would be put into your graveyard this turn, exile instead. I think this card's a little under the radar.
This card's sweet. This is one of my favorite cards.
The fact that it casts Living End stuff is like there's now like 2 different additional cards from this set make Living End easier to cast on cards that are better than Cascade.
Yeah. I mean, not to mention, just like, you're talking like combo stuff. Mm-hmm. Just go even a little like looser. It's got 1 power and things that Modern cost 1. Like, you can just cast your Serum Visions when you attack with this guy.
Right.
Like, that's really good.
Or just cast Lightning Bolt.
Yeah. I think honestly, this card being put into a Delver deck might actually be a thing.
Delver.
Well, no, I'm saying like a Delver deck is hard sometimes because like setting up Delver is difficult, but then on top of that, like using your mana efficiently and actually that competing with the style of play that say like a Grixis Shadow has is not favorable.
So I did this for Delver because I think that Delver, the card, is bad in Modern. I think that the type of strategy that Delver wants to play is very good. And so I think that this could be in a Delver style deck, but you'd play Terramander or you'd play one of the Grixis 5/5s or you play, there's so many other cards that are just better. But this card is good with all of those.
Yeah, I mean, also like...
What if this is secretly the red 2-drop?
This card is sick.
It like has the potential to be better than Young Pyromancer.
Like, wait, is there some sort of combo with like this Become Immense and something insane? Like...
Fair. Yeah. There might be something.
So you can probably manipulate... I mean, I don't exactly know what the most expensive instant or sorcery, but there's probably some massive one of the ultimatums. Like, what about some combo deck that wanted to play like Cruel Ultimatum with this and like a Become Immense and just all the self-mill?
4 color, yeah.
Just like attack on turn 3 and just Cruel.
Yeah, I think there's definitely cool things you can do with it.
Sick. That sounds amazing. Brew that deck.
Dreadhorde Invasion. Black and a colorless enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and amass 1. Whenever a zombie token you control with power 6 or greater attacks, it gains lifelink until end of turn.
So this is just strictly better than Bitter Blossom, right? I'm just kidding.
Fired. So it's not better than Bitter Blossom. So Mass, this is kind of the example of why Mass is better in singles than in multiples. Like getting a slightly bigger creature. Now, someone did the math. This does kill a person quicker than Bitter Blossom does. But the amount of useful things Bitter Blossom tokens are for, and the fact that they're flyers, and the fact that they can die, and you have other ones still around attacking that turn. It does do the second half, which it's a lifelinker, so it that's semi-relevant. And in a zombie deck, I could see this seeing play. Like we're talking about zombies possibility. This could be on. People are talking Bitter Blossom from like a the fact that it's a fairy, but fairy is a much worse tribe than zombie is. So there are benefits to this card, and I think it has potential of seeing play.
They've also, like, the last few years, they've pushed zombies really hard. I mean, going back to, like, Relentless Dead, or looking at some of the stuff that came out in Amonkhet, like, there's a lot more options than there used to be. You can get pretty creative. You're at the point now where there will be good zombies with aggressive casting costs that you aren't playing in your zombie deck.
Right.
So finding the right version of a zombie deck, this card might be one of the things that pushes it.
Yeah, I agree. Elite Guard Mage, 2 white blue, flying. When Elite Guard Mage enters the battlefield, gain 3 life and draw a card, 2/3.
It's interesting. So it's a human wizard,
Yep.
which is relevant.
Yep. 4 mana is a lot.
4 mana is a lot, but honestly, when I looked at this card and thought about it, I thought it was like, okay, so I don't really love the idea of having this in my deck. On the other hand, I love the idea of this entering the battlefield because, like, I think my opponent was just going to slump. And if this is a deck that plays Restoration Angel,
right, it's
just game over twice with this card, and it feels like you pretty much win.
Like, look at in the Arclight Phoenix decks, you have why am I blanking? The Drake.
You have Crackling Drake. And Crackling Drake is a much bigger card, but, like, there are matchups where I'd much rather gain 3 life than have a 7/4. I think, like, it's totally conceivable that this card alongside Restoration Angel is just a thing you're going to see. This is so much game. A 3 life and a card. Like, it's against some decks. Why is Collective Brutality so good against Burn? Because it's like getting rid of a card with the life swing.
Right.
Like, you're getting 2 cards out of this and a 2/3 flyer, which is not too shabby. Like, you can
Box Goblin Guide.
Yeah.
Yep. Evolution Sage, Elf Druid, 2 green, 3/2. Whenever a land enters the battlefield you control, you proliferate.
This is the card Marshall mentioned with Pentad Prism.
So yeah, this card's really interesting. I go back and forth on it. When I first saw it, I thought it was amazing. The art's amazing. The card itself does a lot of really powerful things and is, like, just a combo piece with a lot of stuff that works well with it.
Sorry. It's the other one. This is the lands one. He was talking about the blue one.
Oh yeah, this is the lands one. And which is still good with what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Do you play this over, what's the clue? 2 mana
Tyler's
green.
Tracker?
Yeah, do you play this over Tyler's Tracker?
No.
Do you play this over Tyler's Tracker in a deck who's taking advantage of Proliferate, though? And I think you can. Like, I think you mentioned before, there's been many times where, like, oh, how do we make Proliferate work? What are the different ways you can do with it? And there's a bunch of stuff. It just, like, there wasn't a good repeatable Proliferate card. But, like, this into, like, a Planeswalker the next turn, and then you just crack a fetch land and give that Planeswalker +2. There are Planeswalkers that ultimate right then.
Yeah, I think that's probably true with fetch lands. Like, the ability to manipulate a Planeswalker is one of the strongest things. But I think in general,
I could see it. I could also see it as a sideboard card in Infect decks that just, like, need a way to kill a player without having to attack. Like, if there's a deck that just, like, doesn't want them to attack for whatever reason, say Lantern Control, this card against Lantern Control can just maybe kill them because you get 1 Infect early, they kill your Infect creature, but then you can just proliferate them out.
Am I remembering correctly that Darksteel Reactor is a thing, right? It is. It's indestructible. Beginning of your upkeep, you may put a charge counter on it. When it has 20 more counters on it, you win the game. It's not an upkeep thing.
Yeah, but at most, you have to do this 10 times.
No, I'm just trying to think, like, with all the new Proliferate, like, is that going to be like, I was just trying to think, what are the things that you could have gotten close that weren't turbo enough? Mm-hmm. And the fact that that's not an upkeep trigger makes me think, is it possible?
No.
No?
No.
Yeah, probably not.
All right, next card.
Thip the Lost.
Blue to colorless, legendary creature Homunculus. It's a 1/1. If Thip the Lost enters the battlefield, draw a card. If it entered from your library, was cast from your library, draw 2 cards instead. When Thip becomes the target of a spell, shuffle Thip into its owner's library. So,
aside from story purposes, this card is interesting.
Continue.
Yeah, right. He was like a thing that showed up in a previous set.
He was a meme that had, like, flavor text and showed up on, like, the bottom of cards as a joke in last Ravnica set. People were really excited. They finally brought him here. He's a legendary creature.
I've been trying to brew with this card, actually. So I've got a couple different versions of, like, the Superior Burning Cocoa deck that I've kind of messed around with. And this card going in is one of them. Flipping this off a Collected Company is really good. Like, it entering and drawing you 2 cards. Unfortunately, it's like you're still trading one of your hits for a 1/1. So you get 2 cards, but you don't get the creatures into play. It's blue, and in a blue-green deck, the effect and Planeswalker that we haven't mentioned is Nissa, because Nissa zeros to reveal the top card. So if Nissa puts this into play, you draw 2.
Blue-green Nissa.
And I've wanted to try to make that card work for a while. So I was working on like a Jace the Mind Sculptor, Nissa, with like all of those elements together to set the top of your library kind of a deck. Also with Mir Superior, but
also on just a boring level, Elvish Visionary is a card that's seen a ton of play in modern history or in Magic history, and this is a worse creature type, but has a upside that if you can actually take advantage of it through an Eldritch Evolution type effect or something along those lines, is worth it. It's like great fodder for that deck. I think it's a thing.
Yep.
Feather the Redeemed, red, white, white. Legendary creature, angel, flying. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets a creature you control, exile that card instead of putting it into your graveyard as it resolves. If you do, return it to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. It is a 3/4.
Doesn't this card just lock people out with Giga Drafts right away?
Well, you need a lot of blue mana to pull that off. But yes, if you have this in play and Giga Drafts, you can have more lands than they have lands, you win.
Well, you'll at least, unless they have an instant piece of interaction, they can respond to get rid of it with.
Correct. Yeah.
Like a Path gets rid of this guy, but
it's a soft lock.
Yeah. It's a 3/4 flyer piece of a soft lock, which is really good.
Yeah. 3/4 flyer for a 3.
Yeah.
I mean, Feather's really cool. What's cool, I mean, story-wise, Feather is was supposed to be the inheritor of the throne to Boros when Grazier, I forget how to say that name, but original leader died. That's why she has 4 wings. Other angels don't. Aurelia took over. We don't know why. She has 2 angel wings. We've never really got an answer of why that is. Maybe it's in the book that just came out today. But yep, happy about that. This card's really cool.
You also could play the red one, right? The replicate burn spell.
Yeah, there's a few different cool combos, and there's actually probably even more than that we're not even considering. Any red cantrip, like target creature gets +1/+0, draw a card or whatever. You can do this on each of your players' turns, so you get like it almost gives all those sparse retrace. There's a lot of cool stuff. And that's the last card for the set, because next week we'll start with the finales.
Finale of one of them.
Yeah, one of them. Preview. You don't know which one we're going to start with, but we're doing it alphabetically. So if you passed the 3rd grade,
because of the 36 Planeswalkers, this is an enormous set review. We're reviewing over
160 cards, right? 130.
130 cards. So
of a 256 card sets.
We were thinking originally 2 parts, probably maybe 3 parts now. But thank you guys so much for listening. We might not release them. You might get more of them because I don't want to take a month to review the set. So it might be 3 in 2 weeks, but in terms of sequencing, we're figuring that out. So we're
well, I think the last one will be the last review we do will also be a Pro Tour review.
Yes.
Or Mythic Championship review. So that'll be in 2 weeks, and then we'll do that one, and then there'll be 2 of these.
So stay tuned. Next week, we are going to be revealing the Gaggle of Gideon's winner. We'll be doing that on next week's episode.
Yep.
And thank you guys so much for listening. Thanks for watching. Big shout out to the Command Zone game nights, Josh and Jimmy, making great content. And we have a Patreon.
Yep.
That's the most important thing other than subscribing to the YouTube right now, because it's the thing that is helping us stay alive. We have remodeled our space. We have a producer now. We need your help to keep that stuff going, because that's the future of the show is exactly that. Patreon.com/theMMcast. So please help us out there. Throw a buck a month, whatever works for you. It really means the world to us. Anything else from you?
One thing I'll say about this set, it's insane how many times we've been like, this is the best card in this set. And then I just remember what card we're about to talk about at the beginning of next episode.
Oh, yeah.
And probably actually the best card in the set.
Maybe. There's a lot of really good cards in the set.
Has the best pedigree list. So yeah, really excited about next week's episode. Thanks, guys. Talk to you guys next week.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for your attention. See you later, alligator.
This has been a production of Time Traveler Media, sending podcasts into the future.